Thank you for tuning in to another episode from My Mat to Yours podcast, hosted by Kenya Marsh, your yoga instructor. Last episode, we talked about how long you should practice yoga, and that was the final part of a 3 mini-series where the other 2 episodes was about when to practice and creating a yoga space at home to practice in. So now that you have your space, you have your schedule set, I want us to dive into why are you starting yoga. So are you ready? Let's get started. When I bring up the question as to why you should start yoga, I want you to really think deeper. A lot of people have multiple reasons, but the more you dig into, you end up finding there's that one key reason. So some people start off wanting to practice yoga just to lose weight. Others want to gain flexibility. Some are curious, and the list can go on and on. So I want you to keep this question in the back of your head because it's going to help you with your progress at a quicker pace than someone who don't really have a clear, defined idea. Why are you starting? What are you trying to achieve? What is your why? What are you looking to gain from this? Purpose and intent. Keep those thoughts in your mind. And at the end of this, maybe you have that answer. But I want to know, have you even stopped to even think about this? Or were you just doing it because, a friend was doing it, or someone suggested you try it, or you seen a couple of magazines and you was like, you know what, I could try that. Or you was in gym and there was a free class because the cardio class was full and you end up falling in love with it. There could be a lot of reasons how you fall into yoga. But I want you to be self-aware as to why you're practicing. Because if you don't have that why, sometimes you can just get out of the feeling and turn off yoga. And it's not for me anymore. But we're going to play around with that idea in today's episode. For me, it changed over the years. It evolved into something else. When I first started, I really didn't know what yoga was about. It was a little over 5 years ago. I just left my job to become a stay-at-home mom. We were cutting down on expenses, so I was in extreme for over 12 years prior. I was in a stressful condition. I was suffering migraines, and I would have depression episodes. And then on top of that, I even had gone through postpartum depression. So I was like in and out of depression, and my migraines was triggering on and off. So when we realized over time that my migraines were stress induced, and I was almost at a breaking point, my husband and I agreed that it was best for me to stay at home. And that was great because I always wanted to be that involved parent and be available for my kids since my daughter was just enrolling into school full time for first grade, and that gave me more time to spend with my son who was turning 3 that year. So while I was home, I ended up falling into another depression and a little stressed because I was home, and after a couple of months stopped feeling I needed something to do. So at first I tried sewing, which it was okay, but it just wasn't for me. I did create an outfit for my daughter. I tried pajama pants. It was epic failed. So I put my sewing machine in a storage bin, and it's been in a garage since. I tried crocheting, and it took me forever just to make one ballet slipper, and I gave up on that. Then I was like, I want to get fit. I want to start eating right and working out. So then I joined the gym, since we went down to one vehicle to save on expenses. At that time, I decided, I can go to the gym on one day during the weekend, and started doing that on a weekly basis. Started feeling great, but the thing was, my body was starting to feel sore. I was working out, I wasn't going crazy, but I was just in pain, a couple of days after. I was drinking a lot of water, but my body was still hurt. And then I started Google up, exercises to relieve the soreness, and yoga poses started popping up. And at that time, it still didn't ring a bell, I could do some basic stuff. So I fell in love with this one pose that's great after a leg day. If you're really good into doing legs and squats, then that pose would be the pose for you. It's called a thread the needle pose. And if you can picture it, what you would do is you would lie on your back, have your knees bent, feet flat on the floor, and you would inhale and you would lift your right leg and cross it over your left knee. Then this is where the thread and the needle portion comes in, because you would take your right hand and weave it right in between your inner thigh and grab the right side of your left thigh, and then use your left hand and grab around the other side and collapse your hands together. And then you inhale and pull it in. And the deeper in, or the deeper you can get your knee to your chest, the deeper the stretch. So that is a stretch I fell in love with. Oh, my glutes was in love. And then, my hamstrings, I started realizing, becoming more tighter than it was. Excuse me. So I started doing more downward facing dogs. So those two poses, other than the runner stretch, which I knew for a couple of years, but didn't associate that with yoga. I just thought it was just a good stretch to do, after a workout. And then one day, my daughter came to me, and now this is the following year in the summertime, and she asked me randomly, "Mom, can you do a split?" And I'm like, no. I was almost 30. I was just getting back to kind of, sort of touching my toes. I'm like, split for what? But, I'm always that person, hands on, let's go. If I don't know it, we're going to figure it out. So we both looked up some YouTube videos, found a couple, tried a couple of stretch, and then I started feeling like, you know what? I think I actually can do this. And it was this one video that just wheeled me in, and it was from Psychic Truth on YouTube. And it was a YouTube video on how to achieve split. And it was some key poses, and they showed the 3 different levels. And I was like with the older lady, where she had a lot of bolsters under her. And I was like, yeah, I can't touch the ground. This is where I'm going to go with. So that's when I started. I was lucky I thought it was just like an exercise mat, but I had a flat yoga mat. That was my only equipment I had. Yoga mat. And I would unroll that, and I would take my kids' blankets and roll it up and set it up, and I would work on my stretches. And you know what? I started liking how I felt. My body was loving it. So in a matter of 3 months, after practicing every morning for about 20 minutes, because that's all the time I had, it was mostly really midday during my son's naps, I would work on it, and that 3rd month, I hit the split. I was so ecstatic. and I was only on my right side. My left side was a little tighter than I even knew, and it took me another additional 3 more months to achieve it on my left side. So 6 full months on my left side, 3 months on my right side, and that was it. I was addicted. Once I achieved a go-to pose, because that was my why, I was so focused on achieving that. I would look up and read about this stretch and that stretch to open up the hamstrings, to open up the groin, and it actually helped me in the gym. Until one day I injured myself in the gym and hurt my shin, as well as I tore a muscle by my groin. So I could no longer practice my splits for a couple of months, and it was difficult, moving in certain positions. So I had to take a step back to let my body recover. But I didn't want to stop practicing yoga. So my why shifted from gaining flexibility and achieving that through a split to now recovering from an injury. And that's when I learned the power of bed yoga. Just simple moves I could do in the bed that did not affect the injury, and it just allowed me to become more aware of my body. And then I started working more on my upper body, looking up poses on that to work on that. It took me like a few months to get back to normal and ease into it, and after getting clearance from the doctor, I was able to get back into my full practice, and I lost my flexibility for my splits. So all that hard work, it took a big step back. But the good news was it wasn't so much of a step back. It just took me a couple of weeks just to get back into it. Hooray for muscle memory. So that was my why in the first couple of years. It shifted to, help with soreness, to gaining flexibility, to then recovering an injury. And then I started realizing, while doing that, I was also practicing meditations because I needed something to keep me calm, because at that time, having a toddler around, it could be, ooh. So I would practice just sitting, and I always wanted to do the lotus posture, Padmasana, and meditate. But my legs was not working that way. But that was something I was able to work on alternatively, since I couldn't work on my flexibility when regarding to like splits and all of that. So gradually I was able to achieve that, and that was a big stepping stone for me, because it was something I never did before. It was something I was never able to do, and let alone lift myself up into a rooster pose from that position was amazing too. And it shocked my son till now. At that time, at 4, he's interested in yoga. So then we started doing kid yoga videos together. And I think there's this YouTube channel, Cosmic Yoga. Great for doing it for kids and for them to watch it. Entertaining and informative. And we would do that together. So then my why changed to now having my son involved and my daughter involved. So kids yoga. And then I decided to take it upon myself and create an Instagram page to share my journey. And as I would share my progress through the splits and the other poses, I started trying different poses I never even saw before. And then I started getting people reaching out to me, asking questions on how to achieve these poses. What did I do? They've been trying this for years. How did this work? Or, how can you modify it? And I'm like, I'm not a teacher. I don't know. Google it. But it was like, I did, to no avail. So I would just send out, try this. If it works, let me know. And it started, helping people. And then my why has changed. I wanted to help more people achieve what they thought was difficult. And I also wanted to represent for myself. See, all this time I was practicing yoga at home. We only had one car at that time. And our finances, we didn't have that flexibility there for me to just take on another class and join. I didn't stay with the gym because I started just working out more at home, and we had a clubhouse that had a gym, so that was just more practical for me and more convenient. So I looked up some studios near me. A lot of them were far away. I live in a rural area, so if you don't have a car and the hours, it just wasn't working out. So my practice evolved from being at home. And then once people started reaching out, I realized I had a different reason for learning more about yoga and practicing more yoga on and off the mat. And that's when I made that decision to become a yoga teacher, so I could represent more women like me of color, more women like me who are stay-at-home moms, and others who just don't have the time to do hour or 90-minute yoga classes. Like, when you have so much on your plate and you have multiple kids and they're in multiple activities, and then you have to maintain a household and you have all these other things you need to do between cooking and all that kind of stuff. I don't watch TV. That's a whole nother subject. So my time is allocated towards everything. And I made sure that 10 o'clock, I'm in getting my yoga done. Once I had my son on a schedule for napping, that was also my me time. That was my self-care. I started glowing different. I started gaining confidence that I didn't know I had. I discovered new strengths I didn't know I had. And now I wanted to give back and share that with others who may have been in the same boat as me and didn't know it. Instagram had opened that window for me to connect with other moms around the world who had similar issues, different stories, come from different backgrounds, and the struggles we would share together, and the triumphs and the celebrations of just a little, oh yay, I moved the micro inch, and meditations and the mantras and hand gestures. It was just like a floodgate had opened. So through teacher training, I learned even more that yoga, practicing just the physical aspects of it, was just like a tip of the iceberg. Now I have the deeper understanding that it's really a connection of mind, body, and soul. I look at things on a more conscious level at this point. I don't judge anyone, and I didn't turn vegan until 2 years ago. So 3.5 years into my journey, I turned vegan. It is something that was a personal choice, not because I was a yogi or a yoga teacher. And it's nothing that I encourage or discourage. It is a personal preference. I like the environment and I want it to be around for my grandkids one day. So that was my conscious choice. On top of watching some documentary, and we're always like, all right, that's it. But that's a whole nother subject. So with yoga, you definitely learn the non-judgment factor. I'm not no crazy yogi pushing my lifestyle or anyone. Yoga is not a religion. It is just something that can help you cope through anything that you're going through. There's so much ways you can just meditate. You can just sit on your mat. You can lay on your mat. You can roll on your mat. As long as you're moving or still but present. That's why you can practice yoga. It's so much flexibility with it. It's not rigid. It takes time. It teaches you patience. So to close off, I really want you to think about your why. I hope my little story, which I didn't know it would take me this long, but I hope this story, as to the different whys that I had, inspire you to practice. And don't get set that it's going to be this and think that's going to be it. Yoga is a journey. And as you learn new things, your perspectives change, your whys is going to change. But if you're clear and defined with your why, you will see the progress that I've seen countless times from myself, my students, and many others. So I hope you found this podcast helpful and informative and insightful. I'm just going to close off with just letting you know that I appreciate you for hanging around and listening. And just tune in to next week's episode, where we're going to talk about how can you find the right yoga teacher to suit your needs. We're going to get into that. So I look forward to you coming back to meet me on my mat, on your mat, and we'll get that discussion going. Have a wonderful and productive week, and happy Mother's Day to those who are mothers and get to share it with your loved ones.